Welcome to the Republican Professor this morning for me in California, but on the East Coast, where our guest is joining us, it's afternoon. We have the most special guest in the entire universe, Mrs. Jonalyn Fincher. Thanks for being here, Jonalyn.
I'm glad to be here with you, Lucas.
I'm glad you're here too. Jonalyn, I've known you for quite a long time, I think. You sat in front of me in JP Moreland's Philosophy of Mind. I think that's where I first saw you.
I don't remember. I didn't realize that.
That would not surprise me at all. It didn't seem like you knew I existed.
I'm so
but that's okay. That's all right. I had a hard enough time just trying to keep up with what JP was doing.
That's probably where my mind was too. And
yeah.
Ooh, you hear that? That's our Polar Express that goes right through our backyard here. And
is that right?
I'm sure. Yeah. I call her the crossroads. So if you hear that again, that's what you've got going on.
I'm so glad you told me, because I thought it might have been somebody in the bathroom.
Oh gosh.
And I was about to ask, what in the world did you guys have for dinner last night?
Oh, my word. Lucas, you're so memorable. I'm embarrassed that I forgot you. Was Dale in that class with us?
Well, you definitely were not married to Dale at that time. I don't think. I think that would have been in 2003.
Yes, but early 2003, January 5th.
Now, I don't think I knew Dale until later. I actually don't think I knew Dale until he was married to you. But okay, so for everybody who doesn't know anything about what we're talking about, we're talking about Biola University. This is the early 2000s in California. It's a Christian school in California. This is a graduate program in philosophy. And so basically we're a bunch of nerds. We had a class called Philosophy of Mind, which is the one I'm referencing. And that's the one I first met Jonalyn in. I think we probably exchanged some kind of greeting at some point in the class, but I didn't really get to know you until later. Well, we knew each other. Gosh, we've known each other for almost 20 years, and you've been through some professional iterations during that time. You were probably one of the more stylish philosophy people that I remember. Definitely not what your husband Dale would call a philbot, which is a compliment in case anybody didn't pick that up. A philbot is kind of like a robot that only talks philosophy. And
I forgot that term. He used it so much.
Analytic philosophy is a specific kind of philosophy where, if P then Q, and necessarily this and possibly that and blah blah blah. Well, anyway, philosophy is great training. I don't mean to disparage it. We had JP on this podcast actually, so the professor we're talking about was on. He's awesome. But we had a great time, and Jonalyn is the latest iteration of her professional life is as an artist. And what I love about your journey as an artist is that I think I have a book that you gave me 10 years ago, I think. And you inscribed it, which is why I know when you gave it to me, because you're one of those kind of people that will write handwritten cards with artistic, well, to me it feels like artistic handwriting, calligraphy kind of. I'm not sure if that's your real handwriting or if you meant to do that, but I think you date it too. I'm hoping you did, because I think it was 2012 you gave me that book.
Yeah, I always date the inscription, so I'd be surprised if it wasn't a date.
I didn't bring it out. I should have. It's in my office. I had it out, but I forgot to bring it over here. But yeah, it's called The Artist's Way. And now I only bring that book up because it seems to me that was around the time that you started thinking about becoming an artist.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like you were already well on your journey. So you are now a painter and you share your stuff on social media, and I'm constantly, I mean, I've been amazed for years. It's been years that I've been amazed. So that's how long you've been, at least I've thought you were good. Now I don't know if I'm the best judge, but I think I'm pretty good judge. But I've just been amazed at how you, it seemed to me that this girl that was sat in front of me in philosophy of mind, you know, uh, decided one day, I'm going to become a painter. Now, I don't mean to make you sound robotic, but it was almost like you were just having your biscuits and your tea or whatever. You were having your espresso, and you were looking. I don't know. You're looking around, and you're like, I want to paint that.
This reminds me of that scene in Legally Blonde where they like kind of are teasing Reese Witherspoon's character for I don't know how many of your listeners even watch Legally Blonde, so hopefully this isn't falling on deaf ears.
You're
But they're
dating
like,
yourself. That's
I think
that's considered an old movie now.
I know it is an old movie, but
Well, my
it's
students wouldn't even know what you're talking about.
well, that's okay. In this scene, she's blonde and she's also brilliant, but she's kind of an airhead too. And her professor looks at her and says, I think you just woke up one day and decided, I'm going to become a lawyer. And it's reminding me of what you're saying. But the road to painting was not that easy at all, Lucas. Not at
Yeah,
all.
I bet. I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. So what was it like? What do you remember the moment that you thought you wanted to become a painter?
Well, that's so interesting to look at. It's so much clearer in retrospect. Um, so when I got pregnant for the first time, we miscarried the baby. And that was really the beginning of us opening ourselves up to the possibility of starting a family, because we had been married for 10 years and traveled and spoke and wrote books together, my husband and I. And so a baby was very interruptive to us. We our philosophy training and arguing skills evaluated if we should even have a child. We decided to have, and we had Finn, my oldest. Oh shoot, I'm not supposed to say his name. Okay, I won't say my second son's name. His name's already out there, but trying not to say their names as much in public. So our oldest really changed me. Even at the very beginning, he was really colicky and difficult. He didn't sleep very well. But something happened. It was like a little switch got turned on and I started to paint, which is strange because you're sleep deprived and you're crabby and you're trying to figure out how you're going to do all this. We were at the time living in this 120 square foot cabin in the Rocky Mountains. It was three dogs, one cat, me and Dale, and our sweet little oldest son who never slept. And I started to paint, and it wasn't like all of a sudden that's all I wanted to do. I painted, I think, once a week. It was my special time to start painting. And it wasn't very good. I didn't share it, certainly didn't share it publicly. And it was always watercolor. There was no doubt in my mind it should be oil or pastel or acrylic.
Now hold on a sec. I want, that's interesting detail. How
Yeah.
did you know should be watercolor
Well, I
only?
didn't know. I didn't know why. I just did it because I had watercolors. I had the paper. So one of the biggest hurdles in doing any art is getting supplies and investing. That usually stops a lot of people. Where do I go? What do I get? You usually need a guide, but I had that already. So I had done watercolor painting just as like an amateur. I had minored in art for the first year at University of Virginia. I had always taken art classes in high school. I remember distinctly my first watercolor class around age 10 when I was just delighted at the sunset. It was atrocious, but to me it was wonderful, this power paint had. But I know now that one of the reasons watercolor was calling my name was because I lost my mother-in-law my second year of marriage. So this would be Dale's mom, to breast cancer. And in her last years, like many women in retirement, she took up watercolor. And she would come visit us and she would paint the flowers in my garden or the flowers my grandma would bring to her. And she would say things like, I can't get this just right. And she would be frustrated with the medium. Most people don't know this, but watercolor is the most difficult medium. Much more difficult.
That's what I knew that. That's
You did.
interesting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So a lot of people don't realize that. They think it looks easy and fun.
Oh, man.
Kind of,
I
this
have
is,
never thought that looked easy. If anybody thinks that watercolor looks easy, and they're an idiot, because
well,
I've tried it and it's a disaster.
well, see,
Like,
that's the thing. You have to try it to know. Once you try it, you know. It is a wily medium and it takes as much mental intensity and planning as a chess match. You have to paint it backwards. Everything that is light or white, you have to leave and paint around it. And if you mess that up, you start over. So painting well really was Lois, my mother-in-law. She never really painted as well as she wanted. And then the cancer got her. We lost her. And so I know now, in fact, I'm looking across my art studio here and I have a painting of hers of the iris that my grandma brought to her. And I framed it. It's on my wall right over there. And then I did a series of flowers and I tried to paint an iris. And I realized as I was painting it, I'm painting this for my mother-in-law. And, I feel like I have her mantle on me now and I'm picking up what she couldn't finish. And it's so clear. It's so clear in many ways. My husband is kind of orphaned from his late 20s on. And so her influence in our life has been very huge, noticing the hole she left. But I know that's part of the reason watercolor is called me. I mean, I love the medium too. I love the medium.
wow. It's, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say on that one because it sounds,
It's heavy. It's hard.
yeah.
But it's meaningful. That's one of the ways you grieve. You integrate the people you've lost and what good they offered you. I mean, she wasn't perfect by all means. She was a terrible monologuer, and sometimes we just feel like throwing her out the window. So she wasn't like this angelic person, but she had so much good sense and so much faithfulness. Love and faithfulness can overcome a multitude of sin. And she was that. She was so faithful, such a good mom to my husband. And that's part of the reason I have such a stellar husband is because of this woman. So to be able to honor her like this is a real privilege. Oh, no.
I would have never guessed that that was the impetus behind watercolor.
Mm.
Hmm. Now, how long was it? Well, first of all, can I ask you really quick, how is it that you had the supplies again? You had the supplies?
Yes,
Did
good
you,
question.
because most people don't just have, when they're trying, if most people probably are thinking, I want to be an artist. Which supplies do I have around? Oh, I have the watercolor. I mean, I wouldn't have those kind of supplies.
Okay,
So how did you have that?
it's very important to explain the shoulders I was standing on. I didn't do this in a vacuum. My mother is mostly Mexican, Spanish, and French. She is a calligraphy artist. So from a young age, I'd watch her do art, and she also taught me how to watercolor. She's not particularly strong at it, but she has the basics. Growing up, my Mexican grandparents really helped raise me, especially in the early years. And I knew that my great grandmother was an oil painter. I still have her oil box. It's right behind the computer. And she is Spanish from Spain and she painted oils. And I've seen her work there on my grandparents' walls. So I have art in my family tree. And I had a mother who was an artist, is an artist. And so growing up, I was always given different art supplies because I showed an aptitude for it. And I was encouraged to do it. I think they sent me to 1 or 2 classes over my whole childhood. That's okay. I mean, I'm grateful for those too. And that's why I had a little travel set of watercolors and the watercolor paper. Those were all gifts from my parents. And I would often paint on vacation. I would it was like the only time I felt permission. Painting is very frivolous in the world of Christianity and in the real working world, where you're like, come on, you can paint, but that's a hobby. It's not going to make you any money. What are you thinking? So you, as a practical young woman who was very serious about my commitment to God and trying to make a difference in this world, I would never have picked up art or watercolor unless all the other work was done. And that was only on vacation time. So I would paint maybe, I don't know, 2 tiny paintings a year. I mean, I still have them. They're really bad, but I still tried. And it's such a wonderful thing to be able to call your work bad. I still paint bad paintings, ugly, awful paintings. They're just worthy to rip up. And that's part of what it means to be an artist, is to paint terrible things and beautiful things, and to know when they're terrible and when they're beautiful.
Can I go back to those classes that you took? Where did you take those?
It was a little community offered class in Whittier, California. It was just a small little class.
Was it on a college campus, or where was it?
Elementary school. I mean, I was only 10.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were that young. Okay.
Yeah, my first watercolor class was about 10 or 11. And then the second class, I took a lot of classes in high school. I always opted for the electives of art. So my Christian high school, and then my secular public high school, I took art there. And I won contests in high school relatively easily that I entered. So I knew I was good. My mom pushed me to enter and win contests as a very, very young girl, but I'll save that for another discussion, because that's another ball wax. And then in high school, I went to Pasadena Art Center, which is a very well-known, highly regarded art school in Pasadena, Southern California. And they had a high school 1-week oil painting class. And I went to that, and we had live models. I remember it was really exciting to paint people who were posing for you. They had all their clothes on. So I think they did that. It would have been even more interesting if they hadn't, but they did.
Of course you had to add that. That's the first thing you added, wouldn't it?
As a 16-year-old, you're so cute. As a very
like, wait, hold on. Is this lady secular? Who is this person?
What's going on here?
And you swoop right in there with that. They had all their clothes on.
Well,
and now half of the people listening to this are like, oh, thank God. I was like, what are we getting into here with this lady, this watercolor lady?
They should know that between my 2 watercolor parts of my life, I wrote a book on female sexuality. So these things are not quite as taboo or scary.
What's the name of your book?
Ruby Slippers.
Okay, I'll put a link to that since you mentioned it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, cool. Pasadena Art Center, huh? In high school.
Yeah, now, you didn't have to qualify though. I mean, anyone could take it.
Anybody. They did. So in other words, they didn't see you and see your painting and then say out.
That's right. They didn't know to say out.
And then, they're coming in and they're like, okay, let me see. All right, you can go.
That's right. In the art world, that's called juried. It was not a juried process to enter.
So that was oil?
Yes.
Now, did you get enough experience with oil then that you thought, okay, I'm done with that?
No, I love oil. I would definitely.
You still do it?
I would still do oil painting if I wasn't a mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very messy, and it's much deeper of a commitment financially. It just takes more out of you, harder to set up, harder to break down. I did watercolor because I can do it in sometimes 15 minutes. And that's all my boys. They're 12 and almost 7. They're really intellectually aggressive, and we home educate them. So I have these precious pockets of time. In fact, you should feel so cared about, because I am giving up my painting time to talk with you today, Lucas. And it's one of my most precious things. But this was worth it to be able to hang out with you.
Yeah, well, I'm honored.
You asked me.
What kind of painting time do you put in over the years? Like how has that devolved and grown? What is it like now? And what did it start with? And how did you negotiate that?
Well, I have a really fantastic partner and husband. Dale is really supportive. So I used to paint once a week for 4 hours, and I didn't see a lot of progress. It was just more of an outlet. And I would just get books at the library, sometimes take little like college classes.
When was that? Like how many years ago was that? How old were you?
So yeah, that was like, so when my son was born, so he is 12 now. So it was 12 years ago. That's a nice and easy way to date it. And so that went on until my second son was born. And then I saw another leveling up in my commitment. I took a amazing watercolor workshop with a man named Andy Evenson. And in that class, he helped me see what I was missing. And he said, you have to get your brushes wet every day. You cannot improve. And he said, no one has time to paint. Everyone says, well, I don't have time to paint. It's like, I don't have time to paint. This is my job and I don't have time to paint. You can just get eaten up by all the marketing and all the competing and all the elbowing out and the social media and the blah, blah, blah. There's just so much to destroy this really set apart time to paint. So I took his challenge.
Was he a professor or was he a professional?
No, not a professor. It's interesting in the art world. You don't usually go to higher education to find the best artists, Lucas.
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
Well, it's different, I'm sure, in philosophy.
How do you spell his last name?
E-V as in Victor, A-N-S-E-N.
S-E-N, okay. So was he
Eden.
was like a local guru? Guru is not the right word, but just local shaman or
expert. Yeah, shaman. We did a lot of incense throwing. No, he traveled and gave workshops all over the world. Actually, China.
Oh, okay, cool.
Give workshops there. He's internationally known. And I really chose him out of the blue from a watercolor magazine a good friend gave me for my birthday. And
you met him in person, or was this online?
Yeah, this was before COVID regulations. So I flew to Phoenix and had an amazing 3-day workshop with him and 25 other women there.
How long ago was that?
So that was right after my second son was born. So that was 6 years ago.
6 years ago. Okay.
So it was after that, I'd say about 6 years ago, I started to paint every day.
Gotcha.
And that's when, and even if it was only 20 minutes, that's when I started to really improve and start to realize that watercolor and painting watercolors, particularly landscapes, it was like if your body and soul is like a huge dashboard on a plane, you have all these switches you can flip. It was as if watercolor painting flipped on the majority of the switches. It just turned all my abilities on that had been sort of by the wayside while I was a speaker and a writer.
Before we get to your, say a little bit more about speaking and writing and how that impacted your journey of art. What is so you're 12 years ago, for 6 years, it was 4 hours a week, once a week.
Yeah, that's right.
And then 6 years ago, you had a major event. This other human being comes into your life, and then you meet this guy, Andy Evenson, who's not a professor, but he says you got to get your brush wet every day. None of this 4 hours a week crap.
That's right.
Once a week. So even if it's only 20 minutes.
Yes.
So I'm doing the math here, and I'm like, well, if you do 20 minutes every day, that doesn't add up to 4 hours once a week. So there's something, there's something about the everyday thing.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, look at, everyone says, oh, you could just do this for every day for 10 minutes. My therapist once told me, if I did everything everyone told me every day, I would never get breakfast made, because everyone wants you to do something every day and you have to choose. I mean, that's what it means to be an adult. Well, a proper adult is you have to choose. And that means you say no to about 800 other things. And you wrestle through the guilt of saying no to all of them. I mean, my painting is such a big part of our lives. My boys know that they do their home education independently several days in the week, because my best energy is in the morning and I need that time to create and to paint. And so they are all rallying behind me. And so then they get to your studio and you're like, oh, I better do something great. Well, then you're really setting yourself up to have a terrible painting day. So it's psychological, it's spiritual, it's physical, but it's required. If you want to be good at something, you have to do it every day. There's no way around that.
Is it a set time that you have every day? Is it an hour? Or is it like 20 minutes? What is it
It,
predictable like that? Or
it is because I have a family. So I teach the boys almost well, Monday through Friday, 8 to 12, because we home educate them. And then we break for lunch. I make lunch for the family. And then from 1 to 5 every day, that's my time to paint and grow my art business and paying bills and doing chores and jogging and cleaning, all the other things also get jammed into those 4 hours. So,
okay.
yeah, tight.
Yeah. So it's not just painting from 1 to 5. It's
Oh man, wouldn't that be amazing? No, it's not.
okay. All right. So realistically then, what is it? Is it that's the
It's
time frame, but what is the time that you have to paint?
it's
Realistic.
1 to 3 hours every day.
One,
Yeah.
2 to 3 hours every day, realistically. So some days are better than others.
Yes. And some days I purposefully stop because I can tell mentally I'm going to destroy the painting.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
What's that like? How do you know you're about to destroy your painting? What's the indication?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? It feels to me viscerally like when you're having an argument with your spouse, and if you keep pushing based on their level of fatigue and your own, you're going to hurt each other in ways that just aren't worth it. It feels like that. Yeah.
Gotcha. So is there something in the painting, or is it something in yourself that you're paying attention to? Is it
Usually it's something in myself. Yeah.
okay.
But there are times in the painting you have to say out loud, stop, stop, you're ruining it, stop, that's enough, stop. And what's nice about watercolor is you can put a stroke down, and if you catch it in the first maybe 5 seconds, you can blot it off. If it's a really
Oh,
light color and not a staining paint.
so it's like sending a Gmail. You can undo it,
I didn't know
but you
you
had
could
better be all over that undo button really fast.
pass.
Because if
Especially as you're
you're a
getting tired.
nanosecond late,
Yeah, it's done. It's gone.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the level I'm able to relate to this is email,
Here we
like a
go.
free email program that trillions of people have. Yeah, that's fascinating. The psychology behind this is really fascinating. Um, there's so much I want to ask you, but I'm just kind of I love how you are really leaving me all the breadcrumbs that I can, because there's otherwise I wouldn't know what to choose to ask. But because it's a kind of overwhelming, but the psychology of painting is interesting to me.
Me too.
Um, the the battle that you have inside of you. You have all sorts of battles. Well, it's not really a battle, but you have all these challenges around you and outside of you in terms of your commitments and the other things you care about. It's not like you don't care. If you didn't care about them, then you would just like, do whatever the heck you want and then eventually suffer whatever consequences eventually. But you do care about a lot of things. And, it seems to me like you care deeply about the integrity of what you're doing as an artist.
Mm.
You want to do it right. But that doesn't necessarily mean you want to do it like everybody else. You have that, and see, that's part of the integrity.
That's
The
right.
integrity is you have to be true to what's going on inside of you, and the pull or whatever it is inside of you that pushes you to the next level of excellence. To me, it seems like you're always striving for something more excellent.
That's very perceptive. of you. I didn't realize I come across like that, but it's true.
I'm not
You,
sure I'm not, it might be that I'm just super perceptive and you don't come across like that to most people, but
I think
I
you
see it.
are super perceptive.
Yeah.
I do. I
But
think that's one of the things that's fun about talking with you is that you study people. And I think people feel seen by you, Lucas. And as an artist, you're trying to create something that is seeable. I mean, I remember when I painted that still life for your wife, and she told me that you spent so much time just poring over it and studying it. And I was so complimented. I mean, there's no better compliment than knowing that something you poured over, you created, you carefully thought through the colors and the shapes and the dark and the light and the tension and the peace and the busyness and the quietness, and that someone else is seeing that. I mean, that's why we paint.
yeah. Are you referring to the piece? I think you're referring to the piece that's overlooking I think it's the Yampa River on a bridge from
No,
behind. Is
I'm
that the
not.
one?
No, I'm
Okay.
referring to the piece I did for a birthday present for her. It was a still life. It had a cucumber in it, and it had a little journal in it, a black journal, and it was several years back.
Yes, okay, I remember that. I'm having a hard time pulling it up right
It's okay.
now,
I
but
don't have it. You have it somewhere, or she does.
I do. Oh,
Well, she has it because I mailed it to her.
okay. Yeah, we've run out of room on our walls. Otherwise, it would be on the
No.
wall.
Oh, I know
But
you have. It'll be
yeah,
there when you have the wall space.
we really love hanging up um, guns.
That's
Just
great.
kidding. No, we have like a bunch of paintings. We have nowhere, no more. We ran out of room a while ago. We got to
That's
get
right.
more room.
Yes, you
We
do.
really do.
You do.
Um, that would be pretty sad if you came over and there's just a bunch of guns on the wall.
You have perfectly good art, and you
You're
want well,
sending us these
guns
priceless
are
paintings,
guns
and
are a type of art. It's a different
yeah,
type of art. They're more
that's
of a
right.
craft.
Yeah, the craftsmanship is definitely there.
Mhm.
And well, how do you choose your subjects of your painting? Like how tell us about the psychology. Is it immediate that you like, oh, that I'm gonna paint that barn with that tractor. I'm gonna
Sometimes, yeah.
okay.
Plein air painting, which is the French word for out in the open air, it just means painting outdoors with all ugh, the rain and the snow and the wind and the bugs. That's what makes it so challenging. Not to mention the people. But when you go outdoors, and photographers have the same problem. You have so much to capture. And so the feeling of being overwhelmed it's kind of costing you, and you have to decide, what of all this beauty do I want to paint? And that's when it's really important to pay attention to what particularly calls you. And that you usually know that pretty soon, but then you start to get your mind gets in gear and it starts arguing with you or with your emotional response. Well, that's not going to work, or they're all setting up over there. Maybe I should paint that. And oh, I painted that last time, it didn't work. Or I'm not good at rocks. Or I can't paint that tree. And then you have this really debate as you're trying to set up and paint something. So that's what makes landscape painting, really challenging work. But I have an example, because sometimes you can talk about this stuff, and for the people listening, they'll just have to go to my website or my blog to see my work. But I can show you what I mean.
Or go
So
to the YouTube and then
there we
from
go.
there go
Just
to your
watch it.
website. Yeah.
Yeah, watch the YouTube and you'll see it. So this is a painting I did on site. So I was standing underneath the scaffolding, and then there was this church. I could barely see through all the scaffolds. And then this was almost completely blocked. And these were blocked as well by the scaffolding. So I had to move my head around. And this is a painting of a church in Portsmouth. And there's a lot about this that isn't right. I wouldn't say this is a bad painting, but it's not a finished piece. I wouldn't sell this, but it provides enough of what's called the notes, kind of like a musical note, of the way the church looked in the light, and the farmers market tents below. So I took this, which I was pleased with enough to create the studio piece here in my studio of this. You can see the differences and the similarities. The studio piece has people in it.
Right. The
And there's a,
people are at the bottom. Yeah.
yeah, underneath the tents. And you can
Got
see
some
there's
street
one,
lights too.
yep, I added these street lights.
Hmm.
And you can see this guy is really heavily lit by the sun. And I'm
Right.
trying to tell a story. And this one has more meaning. This was more just recording the day, and this is telling a story. You know, the sort of narrative of forgetting the church underneath the tents of commerce, and everything is pointing up to the spires of the church. So the repetition of the vertical lines of the trees, the church, the lights, the tents, and then the block, right? You can't even see above the tents or the trees to see the church anymore. So this takes crafting, thinking, planning, and you have more time. Whereas this, you're on the spot. I love the way the church was lit. I was like, I don't care if there's a scaffold and I have to duck under it. I'm painting that church.
Gotcha. Wow. That's a lot right there. So when you, okay, so you're walking by a scene like that,
Mhm.
that bit about the story that you're telling, are you saying that you see the story there the way it's being presented in reality? Or are you saying that you take a scene and then you're like, the scene's not really telling a story, but I have a story to tell, and I'll tell you, I'm gonna go ahead and make this scene right. This is how my painting is gonna be what I should be seeing.
That's a
Or how does that work?
fantastic question. So that is the key. You have just summarized the key difference between fine art painting and illustration. So illustration can also be fine art and exquisitely done, but illustration is usually about, there's a story, Hansel and Gretel, I have to paint them in the woods because that's what happens to these kids. You're really confined, and you can do it with so much creativity in a new way. Whereas landscape painting, you have to go out and see. And there's some people, I swear, they paint the exact same scene I'm painting, but every one of their paintings looks like it's a rainy day. It's like they don't really paint what they're seeing. They're kind of overlaying their own personal style onto the painting. I think if you're going to be a landscape painter, you need to have some humility and noticing of what the day is sharing. Of course, you alter things to make it a stronger painting, but why paint outdoors to capture the light and then make it all look like a rainy day? I think as a landscape painter, I want to engage the reality of what I'm seeing. Now, as all artists, am drawn towards certain types of scenes. That's part of how you develop a style. It's not because you're like, I'm going to paint like Picasso. That's not developing a personal style. It's because each artist wants to paint some things over other things. And then there's a reason behind that. Why do church steeples and roof lines always draw me, you know? And it's because of the bygone days of what these churches used to mean. And the sadness of so many of these churches completely destroyed in terms of the truth they offer, or just empty, converted into coffee houses, or which are also super fun. But there's just there's a lost narrative about the churches in America, and that draws me. I want to paint that. So I don't feel like I'm like shoving the narrative into the painting as much as the things I paint drew me because of the narrative that's already there.
That's an interesting quote that you have. What the you go for what the day is sharing. That was
Yeah,
your quote. I'm
I
pretty
just
sure that
say
was your quote.
that.
What
That's
the
not,
day is sharing. Yeah, this is what that day shared to me. And it's interesting. You didn't say to me. You said what the day is sharing.
because I believe it's like that passage in the Old Testament, that the heavens declare the glory of God, day to day pours forth speech, night to night reveals knowledge. And so everything in nature is shouting, but very few of us tune in. And I really believe the things I'm seeing and the things I'm painting, many other people see. And I think that's why my paintings sell, is that people identify something that I'm communicating that they also have experienced.
Yeah. So you don't shy away from your religious faith? You're religious? You want to talk about that?
I would never call myself religious, though I understand it's a useful term for people liking to organize and put things into pots and label them.
There might be an atheist out there or some secular person that's listening to you
No,
say
I know
that,
it
and
would.
they're gonna go, I know what you say. They all they whenever I hear someone say they're not religious and then they start talking about Jesus or something,
Well,
bunch of
there's
religion, but then they start talking about religion.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I know what you mean, but in case there's somebody in the future that's listening to this,
yeah.
what do you mean by that?
Well,
What do you mean by you're not religious? But you're talking
uh,
about the Psalms. You said nature shouts.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think almost almost everything I've experienced in growing up and becoming an adult um, has pointed to so much pain and mess in this world, and also so much beauty, and those two things exist next to each other, and that's what painting is about, is capturing that tension, the beauty and the ugliness. How do you get both of them, and how do you represent them accurately? And the best guide I found to facing reality at all costs has been my creator and God. And people call him by all kinds of different names, but the tradition I was raised in, and the one that I found to be the truest, is when God decided to put on some flesh and came down as Jesus. So yeah, I do think Jesus is a huge part of it, but it's important, I think, if religious is not a word that a religious person wants to be called, to pay attention to why that is. I mean, I would never call an atheist if they said, that's really offensive to me. I'm not an atheist. You know, I'm an agnostic. I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me get my labels correct. That's a big deal these days. So I wouldn't say I'm religious because I don't go weekly to a church service. I'm not religious in the sense that I am committed to a certain authority on earth to tell me what to do and what to believe. And yet I do submit myself to truth. And I don't think you have to be religious to do that.
So I mentioned earlier in the episode that we met in a philosophy class, in a graduate philosophy class.
Yeah.
Um, can you give us a sense of what philosophy has meant for you in this whole thing?
Yeah.
Being an artist and, well, just in life, I guess, first, but like,
Good question.
people might wonder, why were you in a philosophy?
Mhm.
Um,
Why was I there? That's a
yeah. Well, they probably were wondering that about me too, but I keep talking about it, so I think they're just used to it now. But
let me think.
what
I've never been asked that because
did you major in philosophy as an undergrad?
no, I majored in English and literature and art. Um, let's see. It's always concerned me that so many Christians throw their brain out to follow Jesus. I always found that just embarrassing and disrespectful to the God who created their brain, obviously. One of the things I'm so proud of about the boys I'm raising is that they're smart. They're borderline smarter than me already. And it's intimidating and it's beautiful. But I hate the tradition that's so thick in religious circles that says you don't need to think, you just need childlike faith. I don't believe childlike faith is in the Bible. I believe Jesus calls for childlike humility. I think God wants grown-up minds, which is why the best scientists have always been followers and lovers of God. So I went into philosophy because I wanted to ask my own questions. And I wanted good guides. I went to the University of Virginia for 3 years and got two degrees. I majored in two different things, and I really was such a poor education. was so poor.
Really?
It wasn't because of grade inflation, and it wasn't because I didn't work hard. It's because so many of the people there were smart and they knew how to work the system and they didn't care about learning.
Hmm.
And this is back at
Talking
grad
about the students, or are you talking about the professors?
students and some professors. The corruption was already big enough there. You could tell some professors, they were much more concerned with their own reputation than they were with teaching well. Not all of them. I had a few good ones, but I was very disappointed. I went there, I considered the number one university at the time, public university at the time, and I was so disappointed by my classmates. They didn't care about learning like I did. I mean, I don't mind being called a nerd. That's okay. But please, if you don't care about learning, please do not come to a liberal arts university and pretend you care about learning. It just destroys your seminars. People would brag about like, oh my gosh, it's the second week, second month of the semester. I haven't even cracked a book yet. Oh my gosh. I was like, oh, you guys, this is what you're bragging about. It was like, it wasn't sexy to study, it's the
Yeah.
same now, it's worse.
Oh yeah.
So then I went to Talbot at Biola University, and I was surrounded by all these mostly guys who actually wanted to learn. It was so refreshing. I loved it.
Hungry.
Yeah. So
Hungry for it. Yeah.
just, I don't care about the degrees anymore. I realize now I just want to follow people who care deeply about teaching the truth or the skill or the craft. That's why I went to Andy Evenson. I mean, I've taken so many art classes, and so many professors and teachers are about making things look like they know what they're doing, not about actually imparting knowledge and security to find your own way to learn this craft or discipline. I'm embarrassed that UVA was so bad. And yet I still say UVA and people get all impressed because they just don't know any better. So anyways, that's why I went to get my philosophy degree. It really helped grow my mind, and it taught me how to study in a way UVA never did. And it gave me some really lifelong fellow friends who were learners like you and your wife.
How did you know that philosophy was the thing you should study? But because you said you majored in English and history, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
was it when was it that philosophy came on your radar?
Okay, so this is something interesting about me. I know you can tell I'm pretty shy and retiring, and I don't like talking very much. This is so hard for me to talk. I've always been super extroverted, but sensitive, and as a very sensitive to God and what He's saying to me. And I've always sensed Him in my life. He's helped save me from such a difficult childhood. It gave me a lifeline through some really dark years. And when I was 15, starting my junior year, I was always a little young. I decided I was going to go to a public high school for my last year. So I'd always been in private schools or Christian schools, but for my senior year, I decided to leave my small Christian high school and go to a local secular school, which was 4 times larger and definitely more scary. And I went with the mentality.
You want to say the name of the high school?
Yeah, it was Whittier Christian High School
Mm-hmm.
in Southern California. And then I left it for La Serna High School. La Serna had 2,000 students. Many of them bussed in. Hispanic kids bussed in because of the bus.
That's in a nice area in Whittier. It's called Friendly Hills area. It's
Mhm,
nice.
it is
That's a
very
nice area.
It is. Um,
It's
and
like
then
90210, except for it's more like 90638 or something like that. There could have been a show 90638.
That's funny. Yes, it is a very posh area, but they bussed in a good 500 Mexican students, which I'm Mexican, so I was very open to getting to know them, but you could feel the cultural divide. It was huge. All the Mexican kids ate in the cafeteria because they were given, their food there. They didn't have lunch. Many of them didn't bring lunches. And I remember once going in and sitting with them, and I just spoke Spanish with them the whole lunch period and got to know them. There was no other, I look more Anglo, more white, but there was no other white kids in the whole cafeteria. I was the only one. I felt like I was going into another country. Anyways, I went to La Serna to be a missionary because I wanted to share my love for Jesus. And you have to see how odd that is. I mean, it's odd even looking back 20 years later. I'm like, what was I doing? I mean, that's my commitment to God, and my love for Jesus was so strong. I really
So
put it
you
on
were
the
at Whittier Christian,
line. Hmm.
and this is your junior year, right? You're
It
like,
was
you're like, I'm gonna be a missionary. You can't stop me. I'm gonna be going over to that public high school. Damn it.
yeah, it
You,
was.
except for you said darn it. You didn't
I
say
didn't
damn it.
say, wasn't even allowed to say darn, Lucas.
What were your cuss words growing up? What were you allowed to
Oh,
say? I
I
mean,
was
everybody's got cuss words. We just
not
changed
allowed
the
to say
spelling of them.
so many words. The F word in my family was fart, which I still have a hard time saying.
Yeah. It's kind of
Yeah.
an ugly word. It's not, it's like wart. Wart is an ugly word too, but
My boys think it's a wonderful word. It's used many times a day over here.
really,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's actually, I'm
You
really
should have
glad.
led this whole episode with that fact. Then we would all just totally understood. Would have been like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't cuss much. Um,
Well, but see, that's interesting. Cussing, I think actually everybody cusses. It's just that some words they don't think are cuss words, but they really are. I mean, because it's about the heart, isn't it? I don't know.
of course, it's about the heart.
I'm just
No,
throwing
yes.
theories
No,
out there.
heart, no had so much anger and lust and envy and issues. I'm not saying I was like a perfect girl. I
Right.
happened to not cuss,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. There's a lot
Uh,
of Christian serial killers out there. According to Jesus' definition, where if you have anger in your heart,
yes,
you're guilty of murder.
yes.
So, yeah, if you say darn with the same level of anger
I
as
think
you
it's a
say,
level of wrath. It's more of a, we've all had that feeling of wishing someone didn't exist, wanting to wipe them out because that's the most convenient way to get rid of their pain in our lives.
mhm.
And I definitely felt that. I mean, we all have. Um,
Well, so
but
you became this missionary. How did that go? Did you was that fulfilling to you? Being a senior in this public high school, and did you feel like you really were a missionary?
I did, Lucas. I did. I remember starting a women's Bible study there, and several girls meeting Jesus for the first time, atheists, agnostics, just sort of like nominal Catholics, friends of mine, and it wasn't just a let me like save you and convert you. It was like, these are my girlfriends I hang out with in school. And they all thought I was a little weird. They would admit that later in the school year. But I could tell, I found my niche. I found my people in drama. I did a lot of acting, and our plays were really popular and well known. And at the end of the year, they crowned me prom queen at the dance. And I didn't even know what a prom
Dang, dude.
was.
You were prom queen? That's kind of
Yeah.
like a big step. How did you go from, well, first of all, who are these people, these secular people? Like that you obviously were out of the box as a Christian, right? You and then they just now know you, they just now meet you. So how did you go how
I
did
don't know.
you
I
how
don't
did
know
you
how
get
it happened. I don't know how that happened. I
interesting?
guess someone stacked the ballots in my favor. I actually think that was
Do you think it was, I can't say it because they'll take the video down. Well, never mind. I'm not going to say the word
everybody
because there's
knows.
censorship on YouTube if you say certain words
Oh,
about certain processes that get officials into office. Not even kidding. The words that start with EF. So I was going to make a joke about that. You
the
getting
censorship. The censorship. It's preventing people from even seeing reality.
it's horrible.
You can't find all the
It's actually that
right.
I will just say that it's satanic. I guarantee you it's satanic because the lack of being able to talk openly is characteristic of all of the darkest regimes that have ever existed on planet Earth, and that's not an accident. They take away freedom of speech, which in turn takes away the freedom of thought, and they take away the freedom to defend yourself with firearms or any kind of weapon that you would use for self-defense. Innocent I don't mean offensive use of a weapon.
Self-protection.
I don't mean terrifying people and making people feel afraid and under.
You
There's
mean like the father who's in his home in a terrible part of the neighborhood, who has an intruder coming in, has no firearm to protect his wife and children because someone in Washington decided that it was appropriate to remove firearms for self-protection, and this
yeah,
person has to wait for the police, who
and in
knows,
public too.
and in public.
Yeah, and in public too. It's a little bit harder to cash out the public carry stuff
Yeah,
because it's not private space. Um but yeah, in public too. That's what I love about this recent court decision. We're recording this in July of 2022, and there's a recent court decision that overturned really severe restrictions on, people say restrictions. I don't know if I don't think restrictions is a good word. They overturned the discrimination that was allowed by regulation.
that's a great way to put it. Very clear, Lucas.
Yeah. Well, it just allowed so much discretion for individuals' personal biases to determine whether you had a right to defend yourself in public. And there was no objective standard, like you had to prove really subjective to somebody's subjective standard. And really probably what was happening was there's a bunch of corruption.
Absolutely.
Like only people that could pay to have those secretly could pay
That's right.
would have those. And it's not like Donald Trump has a better reason. He had a concealed carry permit. Why would he? Well, he's a billionaire.
Well, that's the thing. If
It's
you're
not
wealthy, you just have personal staff to protect you all the time. You don't need to
right.
bother with these things.
Well, it's never poor people that get them. There's not any poor people, and they live in danger. They're actually the ones that need them.
That's right.
You know, the people that are taking the subway and they're there and they have this job and they're in the middle of the night. Donald Trump doesn't have to take the subway.
That's right.
What does he need a concealed carry for? Really, he's in his limousine.
Exactly.
Anyway, so
Well, it's such a
there's a
moralizing action, is to say,
yeah.
I treat anyone who doesn't have the luxuries I have as if they're unworthy of protection, of protecting themselves.
Mhm.
It's so, I mean, talk about
Yeah.
like caring about the most vulnerable. If you really care about the most vulnerable, you should be 100% behind protecting people's right to bear arms. How does someone like me able to go out and paint in the fields all by myself unless I have a sidearm to be able to know if somebody comes up behind me, I can protect myself. You can't just, I can't fight them off. I don't even care if I have like a little pocket knife. That's not going to do anything. You have to honor people's complete inequalities of strength. And the only way to level that is with a sidearm. But you know what? Carrying a sidearm with open carry in Colorado, the West, the crazy West, the place where Yellowstone's filmed, was just as scary as walking as a Christian onto that public school campus as a 16-year-old and thinking, I'm here to share Jesus. It was just as scary. It was the same scariness level as walking into Walmart in 2021 without a mask. It was the same level of scary. That feeling, I'm a minority. Everyone around me thinks I'm wrong, scary, foolish, probably stupid. And I have to simmer into the deep identity I have in knowing that what I have thought about in the quietness of my room and my heart and my prayer closet with God and the people I trust, that this is truth and this is right and this is light and this is hope. And I'm a huge people pleaser. Obviously, you can't become promptly without being one. But to be able to stand firmly, completely against the tide. I mean, well, Jesus said this is what would happen. You know, they're not going to like you. They're not
Let's
always.
unpack what you just said, because I think some people are like wondering what just happened in the conversation. We were talking about you becoming prom queen. Then all of a sudden we started talking about the Second Amendment.
How does prom queen have to do with
and then it seemed like you mentioned Colorado all of a sudden, and people are maybe wondering where you live, and you know,
yeah,
and then you sounded like you said you carried a gun when you paint, and so that, you know, now it's like, and then you're going to Walmart. Wait, hold on a second, what's going on? So I think I'm keeping up with what you're saying, and the reason I'm keeping up with what you're saying is because I've been hiking with you in Colorado,
Yeah.
um,
There are mountain lions on that land.
and
Yes.
I've seen you were in front of me for a period of time on the hike, and I happened to see that your shirt raised up a little bit, and you had in the small of your back, I think it was in H&K 40 caliber Smith and Wesson, you know, so, and you had a firearm, you're packing heat. And, and I happen to know that you're well trained and you take that privilege, right, responsibility very seriously. I say privilege with the same oomph as I say right, because in the Constitution, the right of habeas corpus, the word isn't right, it's privilege. And it's
Mhm.
just as much of a right as everything else. The privilege of habeas corpus, the privilege of the writ, it's a right. And a lot of people misunderstand what the word privilege means. Privileges or immunities, the word is in the Constitution. It means this has some teeth. That's what it means. There's a lot of misinformation about that, but of
Thank you
course it's
for
not flagged. It's not flagged by YouTube though.
thank you for washing that word off a little bit. The
Yeah,
word
yeah.
has been very,
Yeah, yeah. So you
very
have
messed up.
you and you probably would be pretty scrappy in a fight, I think. But your point is so well taken to me is um there's all sorts of reasons people might feel vulnerable. I've been injured before, and when a man is injured, it's it's a for me it's a very vulnerable feeling. And to think that I'm being micromanaged about my personal safety
That's a,
just seems so wrong to me.
that is a great way to say that. We are
Yeah.
being micromanaged as adults in terms of what is appropriate amount of force for our personal safety. It's so demeaning.
Where do you live now?
We live in the seacoast of New Hampshire, the last free state left in New England. Um, we moved from Colorado a year and a half ago. We lived in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains for about 15 years, where we ran our nonprofit, helping Christians have healthier souls and fight spiritual abuse. And before that, I lived in Los Angeles, where I was terrified of guns. And I was so certain the police would always be there to help protect me. I thought my mace
Oh,
and my purse was enough.
oh, I didn't know that. Well, maybe I did and I just forgot. That's so there's been an evolution on your view of the right to self-defense.
Oh, yes. I was terrified to take a self defense class to learn
Mm.
how to use a sidearm. I actually went to the sidearm class. It was like a 5-day class, pregnant with my oldest, and I was terrified. I went to my gynecologist, make sure, is it okay? The baby's not going to be hurt, because we had to fire so many rounds. She's like, oh, they'll be fine. The baby's going to be great. So you can see me in the class, my little baby bump, and firing these, and in people's minds, a woman pregnant firing a gun is like, my head's going to explode. But the reason the baby's safe is because the mother knows how to handle a sidearm. I mean, that's part of why I was doing it. Because I'm a good runner. I could run fast. I always thought I could outrun an assailant, stupidly. But now with a baby, you can't jog along with a baby on your hip and run away. It made so much sense to me. If I'm going to be a good mother is a mama bear, and a mama bear is a human, has to know how to handle a sidearm.
Wow, that's a great quote. Mama bear. You've seen yeah, and you've seen mama bears in real life, right?
I have seen mama bears on my front porch.
When you lived in Colorado.
Yes, we had mountain lion and bear. My son was whittling wood and a bear snuck up behind him while he was whittling. He was so terrified, poor kid. He wouldn't go outside and whittle wood after that for years. They were very curious.
Did you say that you were open carrying a firearm into Walmart in Colorado?
No, it wasn't into Walmart. I only would open carry for a little while. I couldn't handle the social pressure not to for very long. It took so much mental and emotional preparation. But I would open carry a sidearm when I had girls' night out late at night in Steamboat Springs or in Denver, any place I was going to be by myself with females who, like, to me, always are projecting vulnerability, just how they're dressed. and I'd carry concealed or open.
Okay. So did you say you carried openly in Denver?
No, I never openly carried in Denver. I would conceal carry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't see that in Denver typically. I mean, I grew up in that area, so I don't think I ever saw anybody open carrying in Denver. But
No, you could feel the social pressure. It's just like with the masks, nobody's doing it. And you feel like people
yeah,
now are so sensitized to guns being this sort of automatic grenade that the pin's been pulled on. Like the fact that it exists is so much reminder to them of violence. They get gun violence, it gets shoved together into one word, gun violence. And they can't separate the
right.
two. That the gun
That's
could be used
interesting.
to prevent violence. It doesn't even enter their mind. That
Right.
actually you don't have a chance to stop violence unless someone with training is carrying one of those
Right.
and enter people's minds. They've never had to think about it.
Well, it's a bias toward the government, I think. It's the same in economics when I was teaching business ethics on the Cal States and at Pepperdine. A little bit less at Pepperdine, you find this, but at the Cal States, I would always have like a Bernie contingent in the class in business classes. They're upper level classes, but there's always these Bernie people in there. And it's a little scary to think that my class, business ethics and public policy, was the first time they were ever taking the non-Bernie position seriously. But it's a bias toward the government. They would be talking about the 1%. They'd be really concerned about the 1%. I'd say, what's missing in your analysis about the pie chart as far as wealth goes is the government. You never talk about the government. How much wealth the government controls and owns. As if the government doesn't have any bank accounts, doesn't own any land, is not an actor in any way other than benevolent or something. And these
That's
words of, yeah, these words of used of social programs, they're so inappropriately used, like generous social security benefit, the compassionate, no, these programs are not compassionate. They're not generous. Those are wrong words. Those words don't apply. This is a strange legal person, the government, and whatever it is, it's not generous and it's not compassionate, but
it's
it
so
does own property and it does control wealth, and
huge.
not very efficiently either. If it was a private party, you would have the most severe disdain for this individual. I mean, can you imagine a private party acting this way?
Oh, I
But of
know.
course, if this private party had nuclear weapons, you'd watch what you were saying, right?
Well, well, actually, I agree with you. I think that's a really good analysis of how the bias towards government being capable, efficient, knowledgeable enough to fix these problems. But when I think of sidearms themselves, the only time people feel okay with sidearms is when they're in the holster of a
Yeah,
of a cop, right? And they see
that's
the
kind of what I was going for.
yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
But I realized because I hate seeing a sidearm. I hate it. I hate seeing it on my hip. I hate seeing it on my husband's. I hate seeing it on people in public, open or concealed carry. I hate it. And I know why I hate it. This is the thing. My emotions don't dictate my gun policy because the gun itself is a red flag saying this world is screwed up. Its very existence says the world is screwed up. Its existence on my hip says there's someone out there with his mind or her mind bent on evil, and this is all I have to help protect me from them. And the existence of it is so terrifying to people who live in their matrix world of this is great, everything's okay, the government's going to take care of me, the police are right there, the police wave at me, the cops are good in this town, we're in a safe area, the firemen are handsome, we're good. It's a jarring splash of cold water in people's faces, and it isn't mine. But my discomfort shouldn't. My discomfort should not then drive me to shut my eyes to the reality. I use the same thing when I paint. There are things I have to paint 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times. The discomfort shouldn't keep me from producing something beautiful. The discomfort can't be in the driver's seat. That's what children do, or dogs.
I like the point you made about gun violence, the term.
Oh, gun
Uh,
violence.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
One word.
Gun violence, a term it's never used of police officers. It's never, that's what I mean by it. There's a bias toward the
Oh,
government. It's
oh,
never
that's,
used for police officers. It's never used for the army.
I was gonna say the military. I was thinking too, like it's usually don't hear like hand violence soon as someone was strangled. Like if someone's bent on evil, they don't need a gun to do it. There's lots of ways to hurt someone.
Do you remember President Obama? Remember that guy? When he was bragging, he was bragging that he killed Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
You never heard it reported that there was gun violence. It was, but it was.
Obama's violence
It was
against.
celebrated gun violence. And now there's other terms too, like the gunman. People say the gunman, blah
Yeah.
blah blah.
Yeah.
Well, but the people chasing the gunmen are gunmen too.
There
You
were
know, you don't, you don't.
both
That's what
sides.
I mean by the bias. It's always the gun's fault if it's a crime, but stopping, so the gun gets blamed if it's bad, but if it's good, it never gets credit. It's not like so there's a, they call it, and also the word shooting. There's they call it a shooting.
A shooter
Now,
and a
now,
shooter,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's why would you choose that word? It's because there's a bias against private ownership of guns. That's why. That's the only reason you would choose that word instead of, if it's murder. There's a perfectly good word for it. Murder goes back to the Ten Commandments, and it's an old word, and it's perfectly sturdy and reliable. Um,
Clear.
and yeah, I think it's clear, and it's a severe crime. It's severe. Now, if you discharge a firearm in public, meaning a shooting, that could be a crime because it's disturbing the public peace. But that's much less of a crime than murder. So why would, if it was a murder, why would you describe it in a much less of a crime way?
Well, it's all about
Unless you
trying to
just, yeah,
give people this oversensitization to guns as a mishandled thing that the
yes,
public
that's right.
cannot be trusted with. And I
That's right. As
I
if private citizens can't learn to use them well, but private citizens have had them longer than we've had the police. Like for example, in New Hampshire, that's that's a really, well, I mean, from American standards, American government standards, it's an old, uh, jurisdiction, I
Yes, one
guess
of
I
the
would say.
original 13 colonies.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's one of the original 13 colonies. There was no police at the time of the founding, but there were private citizens
People have become
who
so
who
reliant
were
on
armed.
the government. They don't realize that insurance, fire departments, policemen, libraries, all of these were perfectly capably handled for the
Yeah,
communities, private citizens motivated by love, care,
yeah,
concern, responsibility.
yeah. So yeah, I love how you're looking at this constitutionally, I'm assuming, and morally. So you went through this period where you began taking self-defense more seriously, um, and you kind of, you don't celebrate it, because it's not, you
Very painful.
celebrate, you celebrate that you're able to protect your family and yourself. That's good, but you don't
I
you
don't
don't
know if I can
celebrate that you have to protect yourself.
I don't think I'd celebrate even that I had to get training and to learn how to operate a sidearm. To me, it's like celebrating having to get trained to understand why a baby inside a woman's womb is a life, a human life. It's like just the fact that I have to argue this to me is evidence of how broken down people's reasoning has become, how lied to people are, how much people love the darkness rather than the light. And I don't celebrate it. I think in the new world, when God properly sits as king and we order our bodies and our souls around life-giving things like creating and fishing and traveling and eating good food and feasting together, we will not need sidearms. Right? I hope so. I hope that's true.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's you. Y- it's probably more likely that you'll, uh, encounter a beautiful vista in heaven, something that you'd want to paint, than a gun store where, I mean, you might enjoy going into a gun store and enjoy the craftsmanship and the just for what it is. You're kind of making the best of a bad situation, I guess, is what you're saying. Is we have this bad situation down here in what we're going through in our earthly existence, and might as well celebrate a little bit of craftsmanship on this self-defense tool. But it's not like one of those things where it's like a waterfall at Yosemite or something. You're not,
Right. And I want to be careful because I haven't thought about this very deeply. I like to chat with Dale more. He's more of my really, I've been spending so much time in the art world and I'm not as sharp philosophically, Lucas, but I do think, I've hunted. I've helped my husband hunt and skin and quarter an animal in an elk several times in the Rocky Mountains. And I've helped my son when he shot his first grouse. And I see weapons, even knives, for the most part, they're used to take life and put it in portions that we can then use so that we can have life. It's a very costly thing for us to be alive, to eat. And I'm very careful with food. I eat very healthy and very concerned about what I put in my body. And I don't know. I don't know in the new heavens and the new earth. Will we shoot and kill animals? Will we hunt? Will we eat meat? I mean, some people can't imagine paradise without meat. And then I think of all the people who are sharpshooters and archery bowsmen, and they're really good with aiming and like they love precision. And I don't want to take that away either. So I'm not sure. I just know for me, sidearms are always an indicator of the brokenness of the world.
Yeah. And then I think you would say something like, if someone wants to take it away for your good,
Oh my
but
word.
they don't have any responsibility over your life after that.
I was raised in a family
You're
like
just
that.
you're just a statistic after that.
Oh my word. I know exactly where that
That's
leads.
worse, is what you're saying.
Oh, it's so demonic. It's evil. It is.
So it's worse. So the gun on your hip, you don't celebrate, but it's having that is better than not having it.
Oh yeah, you're creating a system where people are completely vulnerable and then praising yourself when you come marching in on your white horse to rescue them. We know this. We know this from dysfunctional families. Any therapist worth their salt would say, you're setting up a situation for people to fall and then congratulating yourself when you come in bringing a stretcher.
Wow.
How dare you? How dare you think you're so noble? And it's a savior complex, man. It is super ugly and unattractive, and it is dead wrong.
You're pretty outspoken, and you're a small business owner. Do you have any kind of trepidation by that? I mean, your work is awesome. Anybody could tell your work is awesome, and I want you to show some more of your show us some more of your artwork in a second. But do you? I have a deep respect for anybody that has a small business in America. Small business is the backbone of our economy. God bless you for that. I mean, so you do you have any trepidation about sharing so openly about some convictions you have about the First Amendment, about the Second Amendment, about your faith, the way you see things?
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. Money talks. People continually try to shut people up with money or lack of sales. But I did that, Lucas. I did that for 15 years. I self-muzzled about some of the things I cared about the most for the sake of running a nonprofit and raising money and getting donations. And that's what the 20s and 30s are for, making stupid mistakes to fit in. But I'm in my 40s now. Time is precious. And I'm not interested in pretending to dress a certain way so the cool kids will like me. If my sales go down, they go down. I'm not going to stop painting though. Painting is a gift. Painting is so exciting. Painting is so interesting. And it's why I'm alive. It's why I was put here this time. And I'm still trying to figure out how to blend my abilities of painting with the training I have to think about these things carefully. I'm still interested in how God is going to weave all the chords together, but by golly, I have to keep painting. That is something that's so clear to me. Even if I just paint pretty pictures to some people, it's so rewarding to me. So I don't think that yeah, it's scary. I'm not gonna say it's like super easy, but you know, how do you want to live your life? Some people, I mean, I don't put this on my social account because I'm not an expert in this. You're asking me, I'm telling you, friend to friend, kind of personally, what I believe. I won't go on a speaking tour and talk about the Second Amendment, though. I'm not studied up on it enough to consider myself an expert.
Right. Well, you are an expert. You are an expert in what you're an expert in. And that might be a little bit more than you're giving yourself credit for, because you are an expert in what it's like to be someone who wants to protect themselves and has to navigate all of the crazy, like what you said, kind of manipulative strategies to disarm you. It's not the healthiest rhetoric on the side of disarmament, and the manipulation comes out in this language of, we're doing it for your own good. At the same time, everybody knows the police have no duty to protect any individual, that they're not a bodyguard. That's just not what it is. And so it does require, you said it's scary. It does require courage. And I appreciate you saying that it is scary, because my understanding of courage is that it requires fear. If you don't have any fear, you can't be courageous. So you have courage as a small business owner. Would you like to show us some more of your paintings?
Oh yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay,
And
let me make the screen bigger so that everybody can see.
okay, so I always think the most exciting paintings are the ones you're doing right now. So these are the ones I did this week. I have a series of cards, flower cards, bird cards, and then like occasion cards. And they're in, I think, 11 shops now in Colorado and New England. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I've been working really hard, going door to door, knocking on doors. Some wonderful people I get to work with. And I'm starting to break into some galleries now too, which is super exciting, which means more and more of my paintings are not in a file here in my studio, but they're on walls around the state. It's great. So this is a painting I did this week of some, hopefully you can tell, there's some tulips.
Oh yeah.
And, I designed the way, I mean, I use tulips as the reference, but I designed the way I wanted them to look. And then it's just going to be a series of 4 cards. So we have tulips.
Can you show us your signature at the bottom too?
Oh, sure.
Every one of them is signed like that. It's a specific.
Just my first name. My first name's hard enough, you know, you don't need to throw in the last name when you have a hard first name. So so we've got a bird of paradise and some tulips. And then the daffodils, I'm really pleased with these. It's a little bit more of a courageous composition with this sweeping across and being blocked by that stem.
Oh.
And then the last one I did yesterday are the sweet peas.
Oh, that's cool. That's my favorite. I mean, they're all cool. I don't mean to,
for those
listening, I don't mean to say the other ones sucked, but yeah, they're all awesome. But that one for some reason grabbed me, and I don't know why, but I think it's just something dramatic about it that caught my eye. Might be the color.
Yeah, the color. There's a lot of variation of color here. So there's greens and yellows down here and then blues here. Whereas the original was this was all white. So I kind of pressed those colors in. So those will be available as a card collection in about a month. And I'm really excited to start shopping those around my different brick and mortar shops here.
how do you go about getting them into the shop? You show up and you
Yes.
just kind of ask. Wow.
You just smile a lot. I use all those gifts that helped me become prom queen.
And do you negotiate there on the spot a percentage?
No, I have
Because
a set
they,
price. I have a set price for my wholesale cards. They're the same in every shop.
hmm, I love that. I love how you just laughed at that. You were like, no, no negotiation. There is a set price.
I am not good on my feet with money. It's a big weakness of mine. So I have to
That's
go
all right.
prepared.
Yeah, I don't know if that people haggle. I don't. I have no idea.
I
You know,
probably do. I just don't. I'm just one of those who can't do that. I'm not skilled
gotcha.
that
Do you
way.
have like a form that they can sign there on the spot, like a contract or something?
It usually involves a lot more back and forth of emails and phone calls. There's places I've called 15 times over years and they still haven't given me a chance.
Wow. And you persist. That's cool.
It
Wow,
took,
that takes a lot right there. That
yeah,
I
there's
mean,
some
just in addition to you put all this work in your painting, and then now you obviously don't paint every single card. So is
oh
there a
no,
way that you can?
I print them all off. So I'll take something that's this big and I'll shrink it down to about 4x6 size. And a lot of people will purchase them and frame them. Um, and that's great because they can have a really inexpensive piece of art on their wall. It's small and it's a nice way to share
What do
your
you
way.
would? Yeah, tell us about your theory of art on walls. I think there should be a lot more art on walls. I don't know why. It always drives me nuts when I walk into a college campus a classroom. The walls are totally blank and maybe there's a cork board with the latest iteration of whatever administrative nonsense they got going on that week. But there's not any kind of art, and it's like the Pepperdine walls and in their classrooms are some of the ugliest. It's just a blank. It's just,
Yeah,
ugh. You
that's
know,
really that's really embarrassment for that
yeah, there
kind of a campus on such a beautiful spot. I
it is
really
weird. It's such a dramatically different change. There's a film called The Emperor's Club with Kevin Kline, and I showed that film at Pepperdine when I was teaching because it's about kind of Western heritage, Western culture, which is the class I was teaching for over 10 years there. And his classroom in the film is so elaborately decorated. It's got little Roman statues and it's got all sorts of really cool stuff that are related to the material you're studying. It's pleasant to look at. It's inspiring for the students. It makes you want to learn. It's kind of thing.
yes.
And then in the special features of that DVD, there was an interview with a Pepperdine professor. Actually, he's the guy I replaced. And they're in the classroom I'm in. And the walls are so ugly and blank. And it's just, it breaks your mind. And it's same in churches too. Like in churches are ugly.
It's always bothered me. It's always bothered me so much. It's a frag. Humans today are so fragmented. They don't have consistency. They have a gorgeous Instagram feed. Their page on Instagram is just rock star beautiful, and then you go to their home and they live like a slob, and it's just so ugly. And it's so obvious to me that people value beauty. We all know that it's easier to listen to someone who's brushed their teeth and blown their nose than it is to someone who hasn't. It's just personal hygiene is this huge way of serving each other. But I think a lot of people, well, art, like most of the disciplines in the academy, has been overrun by snobs and wannabes and pretenders. And so art has been pulled out of the hands of the common man and woman. And so people think that art belongs to the elites who use a language, an insider language, to keep it from being accessible to the common person. So there's that feeling of
Yeah. Yeah.
inadequacy and shame. It's big. I don't understand why that painting's beautiful, so I probably shouldn't even say anything. I'll have people say that to me. Well, I couldn't do that. One of the most common things I hear when I'm out in public painting, I can't even draw a straight line. I want to tell them I can't either. I'm terrible at drawing straight lines. You don't need to be able to draw a straight line to be an artist. Who told you that? Who lied to you? I mean, I don't say that. I just keep painting. But there's this instant inadequacy.
Hmm.
Like just notice the art.
Hmm.
Just notice what they're doing. Stop referring back to yourself.
Is it purely subjective, the quality of art?
No, absolutely not. Art has rules just like running a 10 meter, whatever, 5 meter, 1 meter, whatever. Art has rules just,
That's a popular misconception, in other words.
oh, it's the elites. They've done it so that they can control everything. It's postmodernism leaked into the arts, and it's a power game. No, there's a reason. Oh, let me show you. Here, take this. No, I'm
Hold
not
on,
saying.
let me make my screen bigger here. Okay.
So this is a painting. It's a plein air piece. I'm particularly proud of. I did it last month. If I asked you, what is this painting about?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me, what's this painting about? Give me three
on the
words.
spot?
3 words.
What's it about? I would just say it's about the shoreline. It's about the seaside.
Great.
Maybe it's
No,
about independence because of the guy that has a boat and he could take that anywhere.
you're on to me. Okay, so this painting isn't about that lighthouse or the lighthouse residents.
Those are images in the background for those listening.
It's in the background. It's much lighter in value than the boat or the rocks on purpose, because I'm guiding the viewer through the painting as a path. The point of the painting is the darkest. You always know the darkest and the lightest, if you're a good painter, are the places you want the eye to rest. So the rocks are the darkest and the lightest. In fact, if it was just cut off here, that would be an interesting painting. We've got the line of the sailboat and then the line of the mast to take you to the horizon and hopefully back around again. So I'm guiding my viewer on purpose. Any good artist, any good film director, any good poet, any artist knows you are in charge of directing your viewer a certain way. And if you don't, some people would say, who don't want to do the work, well, the point was not to have a path, to show how in our lives as humans today, there's no path. I'm like, okay, well, or else you were just really lazy. How come those are indiscernible from each other?
Now, how do people know that that's not just, it is subjective, but that's just your subjective values? Because there's a lot of crazy stuff out there that I would not even know as art. Like we went to the Guggenheim one time in New York, and I'll tell you a little quick anecdote. Short story long, we were going up. No, just kidding. I just love saying that. We were going up the circle. It's a Frank Lloyd Wright building, Ooh, Frank Lloyd Wright, supposed to love him. But I was, it's a cool building, I guess, but the exhibit is like a spiral up, and we got to this thing that looked like a construction zone, and it looked like a bunch of, like, it looked like it was kind of a pain to bring all that stuff up. It looked like an alley you'd see in an alley. And so I went and I asked for my money back, because when I paid for it, I said, am I going to like this? And they said, yeah, you are going to love it. I said, is this high quality art? What am I paying for? They said, it's high quality art. It's the best. And I said, okay, all right, we have a verbal contract, so you'd better deliver. And I paid with my Visa. Well, I got a full refund because I said, that's not art. And I said, I want my money back. And, they gave me a hard time about it, but they gave me my money back.
Good for you. Good for you demanding it back.
But you have this kind of a clear view of what art is. Can you define it for us? Or I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just interested in if you have
You are, putting me on the
rough.
spot because I'm not sure I've ever been asked that yet. You know, what's interesting is I have this philosophy side and I have this art side, and it's very rare that they get to meet. They've never met in public yet. This is the first time, Lucas. So if this flopped, I'm just going to blame you because it was your idea.
You
Let's see,
can, you can
off,
totally blame me.
off the top of my head, can I define art? Well, I want to say it has to be a big enough definition to take in all the types of art. So, you know, a performing artist is called an artist. So you have the music, you have theater, you have, you know, um, formal like fine arts. You have architecture. Sometimes people consider that, you know, an art form. And then there's so many things that can take an art form. I think that you have to have, at the very least, as we learn in philosophy of religion, a list of family resemblances, things that maybe not every single piece of art has, but a majority of them have. And I think I would start there because art is a human creation. It's not something that's a natural kind. Though I think, you know, everything God made, you could say is his art form. It said that's not very helpful. You know, we're using stuff he already made and reconstructing it. I probably would make a distinction between art and a craft. People use the term broadly, sloppily, to say, oh, did you see that? You know, this hamburger is a work of art, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I think I would probably try to tighten up the word art in my definition to include just those things I'm talking about, that list.
I think it's oftentimes applied, kind of contrasted with science, but you'll see the College of Arts and Sciences, and they're kind of put together, and then you'll see arts and crafts. So it's interesting I just was curious to see if you've ever thought about it. I know you're a thoughtful person. Are you a feeler on the Myers-Briggs, or are you a thinker?
I'm a feeler.
Are you?
Yes.
Wow. And you went you were a feeler and you went into philosophy.
I
Wow.
was an unusual one there.
Yes, you were.
Only female feelers in the whole program.
Yeah.
that cared about fashion.
Could have fooled me. I mean, I know that but you mentioned you were writer and speaker. How did that impact your art stuff? And does that come into play at all, those skills?
Oh yeah, they're very similar. Even if you just have an audience of the one shopkeeper, you're trying to your best to explain an idea to them, the idea that your art is something they will make money from if they carry it in their shop. And when you're defending the truth and the beauty of Jesus's message, you're doing something very similar, even though it might be to an audience of, 5,000. You have to be very careful with your words and practice.
You spoke to audiences of 5,000?
I have.
Wow. I mean, I know that, but it's for the audience, like.
Yes, I have. Yes, I'm going to say that emphatically. I have.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Cool. We didn't talk about your speaking time. How long did you do that? How long were you?
15 years.
15 years. What would you say the biggest audience that you had was, and the smallest audience, just to get a sense? Or what was the average size?
Probably 250 to 500 was average. I did some of the larger crew events, I think, and at Biola events in the thousands. I mean, I want maybe 5,000, maybe. No, there were bigger audiences than that, because it would be an audience that was, because that was when they started to do more, what did they call, virtual events. So I did something for MOPS once with Dale, and they satellite shared that with MOPS all over the world. So I know that was a really large audience. I don't know the numbers.
Do you get scared? Do you get scared going on stage with that many people?
Absolutely. Total butterflies in your stomach. No one would know,
Well, why do you do it if it's so scary?
Is there anything worth doing that doesn't have a little bit of fear in it?
So now you're kind of, you're now it's private studio. Your work is, by yourself, and then you have to get up the courage to go talk to this manager to see if they like your art and if you can come to an agreement. Or
just as scary.
Yeah, I bet. I know you're running out of time. I think actually you might be out of time right now. So we want to honor that commitment that you have with the other important things going on around you.
Any
And
more questions you feel like are lingering, Lucas? We can go 5 more minutes. I'll be okay.
um, I guess I would like you to talk a little bit more about your speaking and writing. The writing is also a solitary process. Do you plan on doing more of that?
Well, I never stopped writing.
You
I
never
am still
stopped.
writing.
Oh, okay. Still writing.
Um, Still writing. I do keep a blog at my website. So
Tell us.
jonalynfincher.com. Still find that my writings. I did a series on friendship this year on what makes a good friend and how to be a good friend, how to break up with friends you need to break up with. Um, so using some of those philosophy skills in the service of relationships, which is a big deal to a feeler. And
Mm.
then every post is illustrated with my paintings. So I am still writing. And yes, that is very solitary. And painting is also very solitary. I really relish it. I didn't realize how much I love being alone.
Wow. Now, are you an extrovert or introvert?
I'm an extrovert.
And you spend a lot of your work working alone.
Yes.
What's that like? Does it get to the point where you're like, okay, I want to go to that shop because I want to talk to somebody else?
Yes. Yes, it does. I don't have a lot of energy at the end of my day because I've been alone so long.
Mm,
Um, it
wow.
it is
You
a
don't get
discipline.
energy from being alone.
I don't.
Okay.
I get trained. I'll be more energized from talking to you than I will been
Oh,
painting by myself.
cool.
Yeah. So thank you for filling up my fuel tank.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. I'm an introvert, so
You'll be exhausted
actually,
after this.
I always am. I always am, but it's worse with some people than others. Actually, introverts can get their tank filled by their friends.
And one-on-ones, a lot better,
So
right?
I probably won't be as exhausted after this because you're one. Jonathan, I just had a thought to my. This is an interesting thought. I think I'll share it with you and I guess everybody. But it is weird to me. It's interesting. It's not weird in a bad way, but it's every once in a while you look around and you wonder who your friends are because you mentioned friendship. And it just occurred to me that uh I never expected to be friends with you. And it occurred to me while you were talking that you are one of a very few set of people in my life that I've known for so long. And you've been to both of my parents' funerals. And I didn't meet you in Colorado. I met you in California. So we have an interesting and long-standing connection that's pretty deep and profound, I would say. And I just realized that I'm really honored to know you.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you. I feel the same about you and your wife. It's just been such a trip, man.
Yeah.
All the things we've done. We've failed in such spectacularly good ways.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for friends who know us in those low times as well as the climb out.
Yeah. And I just put it together that that's really why I'm so uh impressed with what you've done with art because I feel like I've seen not the whole story exactly, but I've seen a really long period of years and I'm so inspired by what I've seen because I know that it's come with great sacrifice and time management and dedication on everybody's part over there, and that you're committed to. I just know you're committed to excellence, and so these products that you come out with are um, special, I think, because not just to me, but I think that they have the specialness is there on the page. It's a product of so it's not like you just were good at it, coming out of the womb and oh yeah, she was going to be, of course. No, it was like something you really went after. And that's, I think, what makes it even better. So what would you say as like finish out here? What would you say to somebody out there, male, female, whoever that's listening to this and wants to become an artist, but has no confidence, no idea where to start? What would you say to them? Is
I
there any
would say,
hope?
yeah,
Is
oh
there any
yes.
good news?
No, there is a lot of hope. I say some of the most frustrated artists, and they talk about this in The Artist's Way, the book I gave you. Some of the most frustrated artists get right up next to creating art and they spend their whole life skirting the edge of it. They become book agents, or they become gallery owners, or they become assistants to an artist, and they never listen to the voice God put in them to create something with their voice and their flavor and their touch. And I'd say you cannot become an artist without someone in your stand, front row, giving you standing ovations every time you create I almost cussed, a really crappy piece. You have to have someone there in your stand. If you know you can have someone there cheering you on, it doesn't have to be your spouse. Mine, I'm very blessed, it's my spouse. If you can have one person cheering you on, every time you feel like I can't do this, you go talk to them. Have them go with you to buy the cheapest set. If money's an issue, the cheapest set of watercolor paper or acrylic paints or whatever. You can go get the stuff at Walmart for the price of a hamburger. It's so cheap these days. And then tell yourself, I'm going to create, I'm using painting as the analogy, but it could be poetry, it could be architecture. I'm going to do 20 horrible little drawings. I'm going to do 20 horrible little paintings, and give yourself that freedom to really create ugly things.
Wow.
The
You just gave us the
masters.
title. You just gave us the title. Give yourself the freedom to create ugly things. Takes all the pressure off, right?
That's right.
Because then it might not be ugly, actually. It starts to get
How
not
do you
ugly.
think how do you think God created women? You know, he first created a man. He's like, dang, that is so ugly.
Wow. That's good. That's
I
actually
would
really
never
good.
say that. I would never say that in public, but this is public. But this is people looking in on our friendship. And so they get the honor of knowing this is what friendship is like. You can say things that the rest of the world would misunderstand and misquote. I don't care if they do. I'm not big enough that I need to even worry about it. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
The luxury of not being popular. Oh, it's good.
Jonalyn, in case people don't see this, that I have laughed. Some of the hardest times I've ever laughed are with you and Dale. And that's a gift.
Yeah, it is.
That's a gift.
It's true. It's so true. I wanted to say, if any of your listeners are interested in kind of watching the evolution from ugly paintings to more beautiful, they can go to my Instagram account, which is at Jonalyn_Fincher. And they can just scroll back down, go back to the very beginning of my feed, and they can see more and more. And maybe I know it's given other artists encouragement.
Yeah. Okay, I'll link your Instagram on this. And we thank you so much for coming on today, Jonalyn.
My pleasure. Thanks, Lucas.